connects to the left. When everything moves in time, we can open up our head. Or the skull connects to the neck connects to the spine. Whenever our joints align, we can help moving minds.
broken body built anew. Spirit lingers torn in two. Metal fingers grip my heart so cold. Slave to the new black gold. There's a heartbeat under my skin.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another painting stream with me, Bachacolio. Today I'll be building up the flesh stones on the oath, and I hope I will be able to get through the whole process. Hopefully I'll have enough time and I won't do it too badly because I'm a bit tired today. The heat's been ramping up and been draining. I couldn't really sleep too well last night, so hope you'll excuse me if I'm not particularly focused today. Yeah, aside from that, things are rather okay. Can't complain. How is everyone doing, by the way? Anyone would like to share? Hey there, Pig in Space. Thanks for joining. How are you today? Were you able to do something a bit more productive, or was it another laid-back day? Oh, that's nice. I've been a bit strained lately, so hopefully. Try refreshing just in case. Because things appear to be fine on my side. I don't know, this one, the last message came up almost instantaneously from chat to the stream. So it may be your connection. Try refreshing just in case. So for the skin, for the flesh tones, I'll be using Cadian flesh tone for the first highlight layer. Then I'll be using a mix of the Cadian flesh tone and Kislev flesh. And at the top, very top, some extreme highlights of pure Kislev flesh. And I will blend down the shadows using Reikland Flesh Shade. All of this will be done using a copious amount of Lamian Medium in order to make the layers blend in better. Yeah, I'm still figuring out how to take decent pictures of the minis on the go. The problem is that the lighting I have here is pretty intense in order for them to come out relatively good on the camera. And when I take a picture from this lighting, they either come out too bright, and so I have to artificially dim down the picture which makes it too dark. So there will be a happy medium, and I hope to find it soon. I just try to take a quick picture just before writing the post. I'll figure it out. It'll take some time, but I'll figure it out. Oh yeah, well, it's the summer. No, what you're seeing on the camera right now is close to what he actually looks like. He is a tiny bit darker than he looks on the cam. Turns out that it is pretty difficult to capture how the mini actually looks in reality, but we've had this discussion before. We're getting there. Were you able to watch the video of our games last night? And if so, did something come out? Or something that you noticed during the replay? Sure. Meanwhile, I will just moisten the brushes, get them ready for use. Get them nice and wet and give them a chance to absorb the moisture in the bristles so that they can form a fine tip and that I do not break any of the strands. For this operation, I will mostly be using the Army Painter Wargamer Regiment. Yeah. And this Bombwick Ditcord Prime Synthetic, the #1, for the finest highlights. Oh, okay. Sorry about going through my phone so much. Just going through a conversation. Right, so I'm gonna start by making a nice puddle on the wet palette with a good amount of Lamian medium to use throughout the painting session. should remember where it is though. I'll be going with a brush loaded with paint. Yeah, sure. That would help. Especially the second game, because there was some delay. Although the first one might have been slow as well. I just really didn't have an objective position to make the observation. And then we'll give Alien Fleshstone a good shake. Really don't use the names that much, which is why I constantly have to look at them for reference. I just put my paints in order from darkest to lightest for each tone, for each color, and I just reach for whatever shade of the color I need. I don't bother with the labels that much. Recently I started taking note of whether or not the paint is a layer paint or if it says base, just so I know from the get-go what kind of coverage I'll be getting. Because I've made the mistake before of trying to use a layer paint as a base paint, which of course it isn't a mistake, so to speak, it's just lighter pigmentation, which means that it'll require more. Not really. I mostly just try and remember how what's the sequence in which I paint things. And this has come to bite me in the ass a few times when I've had longer... Yeah, I just try to remember, and usually I keep another miniature that is already painted for reference near me. But after I paint this team, I will start multiple projects at once. And in order to not get confused, I would probably need to write down some recipes, some color themes, just so that I don't completely confuse them. Because if I'm painting the same thing over and over, like I'm doing now, I don't really have a problem remembering. But if I give a wider berth of time between painting sessions, it has happened that I forgot. So for the elves, for the dark elves that I was painting, I did manage to forget, and so I had to try and match just by reference, which was unnecessarily stupid of me. So yeah, keeping a list of paints and recipes is never a bad thing. So I'm just taking a very heavily loaded brush with water and medium, and I'm going to make a fine slushy of almost transparent paint here. Because this will help. Yeah, especially if you're going through multiple projects at the same time, or if you're doing something really intricate. In my case, I'm doing a very simple combination, so as long as I can see the base color, I can guess what I've been doing to get it up to a certain highlight level. I don't have that many layers in my paint schemes. For this team, the flesh is the one thing that has the most layers and most transitions. And yeah, I've gone very too thin. So I think I'll switch over to the dead cord. See what I can do with it. I'm still trying to decide what it is best to use it for. Yeah, the flesh tones are the ones that I put my most effort into, because it is more or less the only thing that actually has to look sort of natural, and so it requires some additional attention. And even so, I'm not putting that much effort into it. As in, if I really wanted to go really slow and methodical with it, I wouldn't have made a full step like this, so directly jump to another tone like I'm doing from base to Cadian. I would have had a 50-50 mix of both, and then maybe even even more slower. Well, considering that entries for painting competitions, a single model of the same scale usually gets painted in about 150 hours. You can imagine the amount of steps and layers that it takes to bring it to the way it ends up looking. This, of course, is insane for any type of army or even a squad. It's just not feasible. Oh, I am jumping a few steps, and I'm taking full advantage of the prepared paints from GW. As in, I don't spend that much time mixing paints, which is at the end of the day to my detriment, because I didn't really develop that much in terms of skill to play with colors. As you can see, it's taking more than enough time as it is. And quite frankly, the only reason that I'm going through the middle step in this case, which would be the next highlight, not this one, but the next one, which is the mix 50-50 Kislev Flash and Cadian, is because pure Cadian looks a bit funky if layered directly on top of the Cadian flesh tone. It looks a bit yellowish, and the model starts looking a bit sickly, which can be a desired effect, but not in this case. And so I only use Kislev for the highest. Well, by steps, do you mean per color, or do you mean at all per model? At all? Wow. Consider that the tutorials that Duncan and the gang are showing on Warhammer TV in YouTube is not the way that heavy metal actually paints. The tutorials that they're showing, even though that they appear to reach a similar result, are significantly simplified. In addition, what heavy metal specializes in is very crisp painting, which requires an enormous amount of steadiness and control, which most people don't have. I've seen quite a few painting channels trying to emulate, reproduce the heavy metal style painting, and it is a painful and meticulous task. So even if there are a few steps, yeah, I haven't seen exactly how he paints. I've seen how he draws, but not how he paints miniatures. But my train of thought was that even though they may use very few steps, the steps themselves are very time consuming, because creating the edge highlights the way that they create them is a very, very slow process. And they actually put highlights within the edge highlighting, so it's a multi-step edge highlight. Either way, I'm far, far from their level of expertise and skill and paint control, so I'm not even trying to go there. I just try to have good contrast so that the miniature would pop from a distance, and relatively decent color transitions so that it wouldn't poke your eyes out if you decide to look at it from close. Okay, well, I haven't seen them, but yeah, again, their tutorials are not representative of their actual painting style. So for the display models and the box art, this is not the way. Oh, 2003, I wasn't even in the hobby, so I haven't dug into GW and miniatures history that much, which is something I might need to do at some point. just to see how things have developed over the years. Well, yeah, of course, because they need to highlight their range of paints. And this is with more of a marketing idea, in that why buy just the 6 prime colors when you can buy 50? So it only comes naturally that they would try and push as much product in these tutorials as possible. And they do have a decent range of colors and tones and shades. And as you can see, I am taking advantage of that. I wouldn't mind mixing paints, but if I were to mix all of my paints, I would probably use Vallejo range or any range that has dropper bottles, simply because it makes the ratio easier to match. Because as I'm saying, 50-50, well, for sure, but still they would have at least 3 shades per color. A mid and a deep tone, a mid tone, and a highlight. And some shade. Like Devil and Mud, I think. Yeah, for mixing, I would prefer dropper bottles, because it would be easier to measure 1 drop to 1 drop or something along those lines. Whereas with paint pots, hard to just eye out how much paint you're placing. So I am avoiding it a little bit at least. Especially if I'm going to be making multiple models with the same color. So with the Goliaths, I will be playing around with flesh tones, and there will be a significant amount of mixing there. So I won't go out and buy 10 more bottles of paint, and it'll be for just one model. So for instance, for the darker shades, I'll probably use the exact same recipe, but I'll just add a little bit of brown to each layer, see how that goes. For the lighter, paler tones, I'd use Screaming Skull or Xandri Dust to brighten up the layers, and maybe a different type of wash. And I wouldn't be bothered because it will be for just one of the models, or 2. But here I'm trying to go for conformity. And so I'm going for the tried and tested and boring paint scheme. Zero adventure in this case. So I do hope to compensate for that in upcoming projects. Because essentially you're always hunting for that, as Bob Ross would say, happy little mistake that just brings you to realize, hey, this actually worked out nice. Let's turn this mistake into a tool for future reference. Or this type of covering up an issue into integrating it as a paint. For instance, it took me quite a while to find out this particular paint scheme for the flesh tones. And it was me noticing the effects of using shades to blend layers after I made a mistake that I tried to cover up. So essentially it was a mistake that I afterwards used as intended type of scheme. So whenever you're painting a new type of miniature, or I really love painting one-off models for the same reason, because you can just take the opportunity and throw shit at the wall trying to see what would stick, and you don't care about replicating it on the model in the same way twice. Fortunately, I haven't really had too many opportunities to paint one-off models. I haven't painted a single star player for Blood Bowl, even though I am accumulating them at a rapid pace. Now, for the highlights, I am not necessarily covering every single detail that pops up with a highlight. Essentially, there is a trick that I used to use in my previous setup, which unfortunately is not applicable here because of how the lights are placed. But I would just place the model right underneath the lamp and move it forward and backward, and see where the highlights from the lamp would reflect. And this is where I placed my highlights. So for instance, here on the lower part, I will not paint the last knuckle. I wouldn't be painting here in the bottom or on this side. so on and so forth. Essentially trying to keep a good interpretation of where a miniature needs to be bright and where it needs to be dark. And I found this method to be much easier than pre-highlighting, zenithal highlighting, or whatever. Because I am painting with the idea of a zenithal highlight. Pre-highlighting would be very useful if you're trying to emulate a light source coming in from a weird angle. Like on a 45 degrees or something. Okay, sorry to hear that. Thank you. As you as well. Still, that will not stop me from continuing the painting process. I'm trying to go bottom from top, just to ensure that I don't miss any part of the model, since this has been known to happen. When I am tired and I'm unfocused, I would miss details here and there. And I would then bite my own ass out of frustration, but what can you do? Oh, this is way too thick. Since I will be blending the highlights with a wash after applying them, they don't need to blend with the base tone and in between themselves perfectly from the get-go. But it does make the process easier, and it is important to not be exactly super hard separated. Like, there shouldn't be a very visible line between the separate steps. A little visible, yeah, sure. And this is where the medium comes in. Now, I am currently testing out this paintbrush, and I'm trying to find the best use for it, but for the previous models I used a much larger brush, and I used to douse it with medium and a little bit of paint, and essentially just put a blob of this mixture on the miniature. Surprisingly enough, as it dried, the intensity of the pigment was highest at the center, and it dissipated towards the edges. So if you actually have put enough medium into it, by just putting a blob of mixture onto the model, it creates an automatic blending, which saves quite a bit of time, effort, and nerves. Because believe me, as a person who hasn't gotten down paint consistency by the eye yet. There is a little bit of nervousness and anxiety before placing any type of paint on the model, just because you're never really sure if you've watered it, if you have diluted it enough, or if you're going too thick. And even if you're going to dilute it, this is another problem in and of itself, because then you need to apply a bajillion layers. And sometimes if you over dilute, over thin, even with medium, pigment starts to dry in a weird pattern, so you can't even easily reapply the shades. So it's definitely not the easiest thing to do. Now, painters that are doing this on a daily and are focused on a single paint range, they have learned each paint about its consistency, about how to apply it. And I can sort of feel that happen slowly with me for some paints. And for others, not so much. So usually, especially for the base colors, I would prefer to go very thinned down and apply 3, maybe 4 coats, rather than risk to obscure detail or create a gross gradient, which is far too overprotective of me. And the only reason I do that is because I used to paint with glossy art store paints, which were very difficult to handle, and considering I was just starting out with miniature painting, it was an added challenge that I had to overcome. And the best way I found to overcome said challenge was to really thin down the paint. And in case you haven't worked with very thin, very glossy paints, I will let you know that it sucks. So I actually bought some matte base, some matte medium of a completely different range of paints, which for some reason came chalky. It was a gel more than it was. It wasn't like the Lamian medium, so it wasn't liquid. And it made mixing the paints even harder. I mean, it was a bad start. Let's just go with that. Started off rough. And when I got my first batch of Citadel paints, it felt just heavenly. Even though I did use an intermediary step where I used Mr. Hobby paints, which are very interesting but again, I wouldn't recommend them for anyone starting out. Because they have gradients of glossiness, they are completely different in between themselves in terms of pigmentation, thickness, but they have a very good range of paints, a very weird range of paints. And I really think that once I actually become better as a painter, I would go back to that range and pick out a few colors here and there, just enrich my available palette for some effects. For instance, their metal colors are amazing, although they are not water-based acrylics, but their metallics are insanely good. They have a normal metallics range, which I haven't tested, and a Mr. Metal Color range, which creates such a realistic coat of paint that you can actually buff out the paint once it's dry. So it creates something that's close to realistic actual metal. So yeah, they are amazing. But then you go into the whole 50 kinds of thinners and brush cleaning thinners and all sorts of stuff that just builds on itself and makes the painting process a bit of a chore. Having 3 pots of thinner, 1 pot of water, just so you can paint a couple of colors, no. But if it's something that has a majority of itself being metallic, well, I wouldn't mind using a Mr. Metal Color paint. And also they evaporate and dry off almost instantaneously. So either way you're using them, keeping them from drying out is a lost cause. Like, you probably won't be able to use the entire contents of the pot before the paint dries out. And also their paint pots are horrible. Like, anyone who has ever complained about the paint pots for Citadel paints, you have no idea what a chore Mr. Hobby paint pots are. They get paint because they're twist-on caps on glass pots, and paint drips through the cap and it sticks it in very nicely, very strongly, because there is a wide surface of twist for the cap to twist on, and when all of that gets cacked up with paint, opening your paint pot becomes a challenge of strength and patience and endurance. and I had to use a knife to open them, just to unstick the cap. Naturally, I cut myself about a bajillion times. But still, my point is, my original point at least, is that they have some very interesting colors that, while not particularly feasible to use entirely their range, they have paints that will very nicely expand your current arsenal and can be used for particular one-off tasks here and there, for some detailing or for one particular mixture or something along those lines. Either way, if you're a more experienced painter, maybe you'll be able to give more detailed and better explanation to what I'm trying to say, and either confirm or deny the point I'm trying to make. And you'd be welcome to do so. Because although I am talking in a voice of semi-understanding and, I wouldn't say authority, but I catch myself sometimes giving more advice than I should. Not because I don't want to, but because I just can't. And it's not in my skill set. And this is more or less a learning channel, so I'm not displaying my skills as in giving tutorials for painting. I'm just explaining how I'm going about it for reaching the point at which I am. And it should be more or less a discussion in terms of what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, where I can improve, if there is something that I'm doing that might be interesting for you to try out. Things like that, more or less. And this is probably the longest step. Because there is the most surface to be covered. Steps that are about to come. The next highlighting steps will be much quicker. Yeah, this is a good detailing brush. I used to be able to do it with the Army Painter, but I probably just can't be bothered right now. Because in this way, even though it takes a bit longer, I am putting color right where I need it. So I don't have to redo or overdo anything that I may have smudged with the larger brush. Although a rule of thumb would always be to use the biggest possible brush you can for each task. And I have mentioned this, and many actual painters have mentioned this. So yeah. Also, I am desperately trying to find a place for these brushes. I really liked the idea of them, sort of a synthetic that works like natural sable with just a bit more rigidity. And my setup is naturally falling apart. Sorry for the shaky cam, guys. I would remove this cover, but then it would throw too much light on me. And as pale as I am, I would light up even more. And if I lower the exposure on the face cam further, I will probably become like a ghost. Pretty happy with how the face came out. I don't know if you can see in full detail. It came out really well, if I do say so myself. Also, a trick that I found out recently that works well for increasing the contrast of your paint is to always leave a bit of contour instead of trying to paint all the way up to the border of the next color or detail. It just helps both items be separated and as such pop out more. But even if you do, you should always then trace a thin line of wash to enforce that separation and segmentation between the separate items, and it is a quick and simple way to make more contrast in your painting. I've been using this for the entire Norse team, and so far it looks pretty decent. Again, if I do say so myself. I'm pretty happy with how they're coming out. And the paint scheme is fairly simple. The reason it takes me so long is because I am doing this on stream and because I paint slowly in general. And because I only put up a couple of painting streams per week, so I can't really get into the groove. But in that way I will never get burnt out, which is important. Again, something that I've touched on previously. As soon as I'm done with these guys, which I'm saying probably every single time nowadays, I'm going to start a few projects at the same time. I'll have one building project and maybe a couple of painting ones. So you would be seeing different painting, a different miniature being painted with different colors every time. And since I won't be pressured into getting them out with any deadline or anything like that, it'll be just Paint one mini for Blubble, paint one mini for Necromunda, and slowly, little by little, before I know it, I will be advancing and I realize, hey, this squad is now complete. Or this team is now ready to go on the pitch. It will be, at the same time, a more varied experience for me, so I won't get bogged down, for you, so you won't have to watch the same thing every time. So it should work to the benefit of everyone. And we would be keeping the whole thing fresh as a cucumber. And the heat isn't doing me any favors here with the paint. It's drying out pretty quickly, even on the wet palette. So I will probably need to refresh my colors soon. There is a part of me that really wants to highlight every single detail. This is really not the right way to go about it. I should leave some areas on base coat and darken it even further down with the wash later on. Also using the smaller brush doesn't help me much in terms of keeping the paint moist and workable. And as you can see, the medium is trying to dry out, so I'll need to reload that one as well. Still, I'm not much in a hurry. Should have plenty of time to complete today's goal. Just get the flesh done. As it does take the most space on the model, so getting it done will be a definite plus. The reason I am turning the miniature upside down is because I want to take advantage of the flow of the paint, meaning that the most paint accumulates at the end of the brush stroke. And since highlights need to go up, as verticality in the model, going up to down actually is a good way to make a smoother blend of color. That of course implies that I don't use too much paint, which appears that I am right now. And every time this happens, I just tell myself, hey, don't worry, it'll all blend in with the wash. But the truth of the matter is, the wash can only do so much. Like, the idea would be to pin wash just the recesses and blend that little piece that is left. It's not a make all, fix all solution. But in my experience, it has worked out better than just dousing the model with wash. Especially for the skin. Now, I did have a dedicated stream where I just used the time to fully wash several details of the model, such as the sash and the metallics. And this is because I want the particular tint of color that the wash gives over. Oh yeah, and the letters, of course. The letter straps are a very good example for this, because I wanted to have different tinting between the fur and the belt buckles. As you can see, they actually started out with the same kind of brown, but with the application of of different washes, they had a different outcome. So they are now distinctly different colors, which will help separate the details if you're looking at the model. Probably won't pop out from the table. It's not that pronounced of a difference. But if you take it up close, you should see the different shades, which, as I mentioned, is ultimately my goal. So popping contrast from a distance and not too horrible separation up close. Which gets to my current level of tabletop painting. I should undertake a project of a one-off miniature and try to push it as far into quality as I can, just to see actually how much I can push it, because this is not an exercise I've ever done. And it might be a good way to realize how far along I am in my painting. Because tabletop does have its limitations. As to how much you would be comfortable with pushing details and blends so on in order to maintain some sort of manageable time frames for painting each individual model. Whereas if you're just painting a one-off mini, you should have the freedom to go as hard and deep as you want to. Pardon the pun here, well, not the pun, but words are not my strong suit today. Hopefully you will forgive me for this. Yeah, I think this is coming out decent. Here and there, like here I went a bit too thick on the tricep. This is fine because this the shoulders and the face will need to be highlighted even further than the rest of the model. So I'm fine with this, but the tricep didn't need to go as bright. It need to go as thick. Yeah, and another reason I'm avoiding to use too much of the Kislev flash on its own is because for some reason it does have the same effect as you can see from the Cadian flesh tone, which is it dries up rather granularly, so it's as if I've painted it on using a dry brush. So achieving an actual smooth finish gets pretty difficult, and again, I'm only relying on the wash at the end of the day to save me and give some more creamy smoothness to the colors. Sadly, I do know the reality that it will not save me. It's something that I have to compensate with skill, which is unfortunately not in my possession at the time of this recording. And very many future recordings as well. Still, keeping consistency is the name of the game, as in keep doing it and you will improve. And as I have previously mentioned, I haven't been particularly consistent with my painting. As I've cycled periods of very much intense painting with not touching the brush for like months at a time. And hopefully with the stream I will keep up, so even if it's just a little each week, each and every week, even if it's just a couple of streams per week to put paint on model, it'll advance slowly, but it will slowly give me more comfort, more confidence. Hopefully you will see development in my abilities. And as usual, any comments that you may have, especially if you are a more advanced painter, I welcome them with open arms. Anything that can help me either for paint scheme ideas or painting techniques. It doesn't need to be in terms of shortcuts or anything along those lines. Like, I'm old enough to know that shortcuts aren't really the way to go. Especially in a field where you do things for pleasure and for leisure. Trying to go fast and go strong really doesn't apply. Any on all ideas on what I could use to improve blends or to add some more life into my paint scheme, because I've seen many tutorials that introduce blues and purples and all that stuff, and for some reason I just can't seem to make the decision to go into it, delve deeper. Again, probably this is because of my desire to keep things simple unless I'm painting a one-off mini. Or I may just be scared or lazy. I mean, there are a million possible reasons, most of which are stupid excuses, but still, they are my stupid excuses. And you don't really need the medium. I'm using it as a crutch. But most painters that know what they're doing really don't need medium to improve their blending. They're just comfortable with paint thickness and controlling it, manipulating it. This is something that does come with experience, which again, in my case, is sketchy at best. Here on the other side of the hand, I won't be putting any additional highlighting. Instead, I might even just go over the entirety of it with the wash to emphasize shadows. Okay, and all that is left here appears to be on the face. So for the face, I will need a bit of a drier brush. Because I need more control over the paint. I will be wiping off more of the paint. And for instance, trying to highlight the edge of his pointy ears. Like this. And the same would go on the other side, which is a bit more awkward. Let's see if we can stabilize. Because as I always say, I need to work on my painting setup Because that thing with the pillow in my lap so I can rest my elbows really doesn't give me that much comfort. Although it does make it infinitely better than not having it. But just because something is better does not make it good. An important lesson, and that applies to pretty much everything in life. Better doesn't mean good, and worse doesn't mean bad. Because it all depends on your overall reference point. And of course the degrees of better/worse. And now for the face. I'm trying to be as careful as possible going about the face. I am almost certain that I will manage to screw it up somehow. Maybe painting the eyebrows so early on was a mistake. Part of me wants to put a wash on the face as well, so that it doesn't look like a kabuki mask. Yet another part of me says leave it as it is, so that it keeps the popping of the details, so the rougher transitions would allow detail to come through as a focal point. And also putting in the wash, although controlled it may be, creates opportunities to screw up, and I really don't want to redo the face. I might put a bit of wash in the mouth and just on the lower parts of this, whatever it is called. Okay, so this is actually our first layer of highlight done, which prompts me to take a bit of a break. I really like these brushes, and I think this is about as small as I need it to be. It will be fine. And it also must be pretty ridiculous for you to watch me take that pillow on and off. Bit of an empty stream today. Following Big in Space's technical difficulties to follow along. So, if there is anyone that is actually watching right now, quietly lurking in the background, I hope you do feel safe enough to make yourself known and join along in the discussion. If you don't feel comfortable enough, of course, you are welcome to just stay along in the background. Hey, did you manage to fix the technical difficulties you were experiencing? Perhaps not. I was able to go through the first layer of highlight. And so I'm just taking a break before going into the second layer highlighting. Followed by the third, and then the pin washing. Did I mention I was gonna use Raccoon Flesh Shade, or did I forget at the start of the stream? I don't know. At any rate, this is what I'm going to use. Yep. If I take it a bit closer, you can see under the head there are darker and brighter areas. It does look pretty much cut in right now, but this is going to improve by the end of the evening. How far do I want the highlights to go? Thank you, thank you. So again, technically from his stance, which parts would fall into shadow and which would fall into light. So the tips of his paws will need highlighting. Of course, the shoulders and the head are natural progression. Biceps, a little bit on the fingertips, and a little bit on the face, so it shouldn't be a long step to go through. And then just a little bit of extreme highlighting with Kids with Flash, and we'll be done with the highlighting. Then we will enforce the shadows a little bit, and the flesh will be ready. Leaving easier parts such as the cloth, the blue on the armor, and the always annoying metallic highlights. For which I did have an idea, but I may or may not have forgotten it. It's possible if there is a big event, such as World of Warcraft or StarCraft or PUBG or something like that, if there's a big tournament, it has been known to drop some less prioritized streams such as mine. I haven't heard of any such events right now, but that doesn't mean there aren't any. Because once again, from my side, things appear to be going smoothly. I have exactly 0% missed frames or skipped frames, so it should be running smoothly. Might be Twitch. Right. Where did I put the padding on this? The other side, maybe? Who knows? It's probably something somewhere. It usually is. So on to mixing then. The answer is out there. Yeah. I should watch the new episodes of the X-Files. Didn't get around to them when they came out. Just to see if David Duchovny can actually get into a character that is different from himself. Well, you're ahead of me. I only remember probably 2 of them. So I'm putting on the paint nice and watered down to make the mixing easier. Naturally, I managed to make a huge mess. I don't know, I tried rewatching them, but to tell you the truth, I couldn't. It's just my tolerance for declining interest in series has gone down with the years. Yeah, I've seen the movie back when it aired on TV. So probably a million years ago. I'm not saying that the series as a whole is bad. I'm saying that as it went on, it just got a bit stale. As most series do, when they go over a certain... Oh yeah, Dark City. As a matter of fact, I've rewatched it fairly recently. I think. I don't know what prompted me to do so, but a few months ago I rewatched it again. There is a very weird, very nice, melancholic feeling that this movie gives me every time I watch it. And sometimes when I want to evoke these emotions, I just watch it again. And if you are more or less into anime, Demon City is also a good city titled anime. It's also a movie, so it's not too long to watch. Yeah, without the A, just Demon City. It's pretty old, but it's a movie, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. And it does have some nice explicit content. as well as it's decent schlock. Like, not a masterpiece, but it's a fun watch. Yeah, as I said, pretty old. Almost as old as I am. And I ain't no spring chicken. I should probably bring the wet palette up a little bit to get it into focus, in case anyone actually wants to see the mixing process. Right, so here we will go even more targeted, just towards the tips here. No, not really. But please don't feel obligated to stay around. In case... Yeah, sometimes people pop in for a second to see what's going on, but they just leave. Also, the bot for the music app is counted towards the chatters. But again, if you have something to do, please don't feel any obligation to stay around just on my account. If you're having fun, if it's good for you, please, you're welcome to stay, but otherwise, don't feel forced to do so. So here on the hind, whatever that part is, I think you would be far more qualified than me to tell me what exactly this joint is called on a canine. Whatever it is, it's getting highlighted. Getting highlighted to shit. Really? I don't see much similarities where Johnny Mnemonic is a cyberpunk movie, Demon City is urban fantasy. So, I'm not quite seeing how they would interlope. I don't think these tips need a highlight, but might as well. Ah, the other way around. Okay, yeah, maybe on some TV in the background, Demon City was playing. Like, I recently watched a retrospective review of Blade 2, and someone had noticed that wherever there are monitors or TVs in the movie, they're playing Powerpuff Girls. It was. But it was far. I think the third one was the worst. So in that sequence, it was bearable. And also when it came out, there wasn't that much thing. There weren't that many movies to compare it with. So I remember it fondly, let's say. I have good memories of it. Oh yeah, the fighting scenes, the CGI was horrible. Like the entire trilogy suffers from bad CGI, but these particular, I know exactly which fighting sequences you mean. They just look bad, like video game levels of bad from that era. So these steps are getting a highlight. You're getting a highlight. I think that's enough. Here the bicep will get a highlight. Tricep as well. So yeah, as far as the presence of Demon City and Johnny Mnemonic, it's probably something along the lines of background scenes playing on TVs. Which is fun. I love these little Easter eggs that are sometimes put in. Because you can get a bit of an idea about what kind of people the ones making the movie are. Well, I didn't even know it was based on a book, so there's that. It was a... Well, I'm really hesitant to even call it decent. 90s cyberpunk movie. But I did enjoy it. I have a weakness for cheesy old movies. B-movies, and Johnny Mnemonic in that train of thought is more or less a bloody classic. Oh, right. Is it by the same author? Yeah, cool. Didn't know that. Just a tiny amount of highlight here. It doesn't make sense but it will look better. Cool. I may have mentioned I'm not really much of a reader. I never got into the habit of it more than anything else. And so knowledge of literature is a bit of my weakness here. Oh, okay. Did we talk about Battle Angel? I don't remember if we spoke about it. Alita Battle Angel. Yeah, it does use the same tropes that were put on there. I don't hate it because they are becoming more and more relevant as time goes by, I think. It's one of these so close to reality dystopian settings that it's... Yeah, I like the movie as well. That's why I wanted to bring it up. But yeah, Cyberpunk does use same old tropes, same old things, but it becomes more relevant, I think, with time. It's more applicable now and more realistic looking now in terms of reference to real world than it was when it was created. Kind of like 1984 and Jules Verne's works. Yeah. There's also a game based on it. It's a quest, a point-and-click adventure. And I've watched some playthroughs of it. I've been wanting to try it out. Yeah. Well, as most point-and-clicks are at this point. But I do remember it drawing my attention. Well, I haven't tried, so I will take your word for it. Yike. I see what you mean, yeah. Mm-hmm. A bit of highlight here. A bit of highlight over here. And this stage is very nice. Essentially, you're just sketching out. Repent, Harlequin, said the TikTok man. A weird title, but then again, I am not an expert on it, on the matter. Ah. I really wish that you hadn't said that, because I always use Terminator as an example of original IP that we're not seeing anymore. Oh, so the suit did go through. Interesting. Is it a thematic ripoff, or they have ripped off directly, like dialogue and characters? Uh-huh, okay. Whereas they probably have, I would assume. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Right. Alright, and just a couple more touches on the face. Right, right, right. But it's not as blatant as like direct dialogue, like word for word, verbatim, aping. Right, right, okay. It's curious that there's such a vague lawsuit would actually come into fruition. But this is not bad. I do like it when the original author does get credit for his work. Which is why on my channel, if you scroll down, you will see each and every person and site that I have used to create the artwork for the buttons and the stream logo and so on. I just want to give credit where credit is due. So if you haven't done that, you can take a look down and check them out. Okay, yeah. And supposedly this wasn't a particularly exploited theme back then, so it would have been easier to narrow down the possible influences or inspirations. Yeah, I see that. I see what you mean. That makes more sense. Yeah, well, that's done. Mm-hmm. Cool. Probably not related. No, no. I mean, I'm not, as I said, I'm not I don't know this person's work, but I actually like this sort of trivia. So, feel free to keep it coming. Do you know if this concept, Soldier Out of Time or Soldier from the Outer Limits, has anything to do with the Kurt Russell movie? Uh-huh, okay. Yeah, Soldier. It's called Soldier. It's a very old sci-fi sort of B action movie. No, not Universal Soldier, just Soldier. I think it was even before the escapes. So before Escape from LA or New York. It should have been older than that. It's, again, just the name brought back. There was actually even a video game adaptation. Which was weird considering that movie was never particularly popular. Yeah, a reddish planet full of junk, and he was, I don't know, he forgot where he was, his war was over, but he was psychologically conditioned to be a soldier, and there was a girl who tried to bring his humanity back to him, shit like that. But it was fun for what it was. And this is why I made the... No, okay, so it's different, right. Good. So yeah, I think it would be a valid statement to say I will be able to do this by the end of the stream. So there is just a little more highlighting on the top of the shoulders and the face and some of the fingers. And then we are on to the pin washing. Which shouldn't take too long either. So we should be right on time. Wicked. Yes, and how do I say this? I don't think Harrison Ford was needed for that movie. Well, the second is probably even further from it. Yeah, the second is probably even further from it because it continues the plot of the movie, as in it does the thing where they try to go for nostalgia points, and they take a new character, bring him back to the old character. It's not the best, but it is visually a good touch. So it's made very well on the visual point. It does create the atmosphere it's trying to. That point does get across. The content of the movie is pretty weak, like really weak. Yeah, maybe if you watch it as its own thing. Yeah, I did. I wasn't too crazy about it, to be honest. It did make some good points, and of course the visuals were very, very specific. Oh, okay. Could you let me know who that is? For reference? So if I do get to the point where I get to read something, I would have something to go to. Philip Dick, okay. I think someone was mentioning this to me a long time ago about his books, that they are pretty impactful, extremely dark in theme. Right, okay. Right, maybe that's why I'm getting confused here. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just having a short circuit. Okay. That's nice. Get the cogs turning a bit. So yeah, I will keep it in mind in case I get some sort of inspiration to read. Oh, wow, okay. Is it one of these books that you have to read twice, so you need to get to the end and start it anew? Old computer game for you, big. Doesn't ring a bell here. So it's so disjointed that reading it anew gives you an entirely new perspective of the content. That's interesting.
Clean cut,
Oh, let me take a look. Oh, it's by Cryo. That's a good thing for a start. See if I can get some screenshots.
Eyes wide, no time for sleep. My mind's a flood tide where obsession sweeps. So take a drive deeper. Highways overload. I've been trying to take a detour from these.
Oh yeah, I've seen screenshots of this. Yes, now it comes back to me. I've never played it, but yeah. And this is actually one of the screenshots that that makes me think about Creo whenever I hear the name. Let me just show this off. This very screenshot here is what I always remember Cryo for, Cryo Interactive Entertainment. It is, I think it was a French-based development studio, and it epitomized French software development in a nutshell, meaning far ahead of its time in terms of graphics and style of graphics, not just quality and fidelity, but just the style of it, and extremely clunky in terms of actual gameplay. And guess what other game is that we are currently all playing is developed by a French development studio? That pretty much meets the exact same criteria. Exactly, yeah. They put an awful lot of effort into making the game look good and fun. Like, they have so many little touches here and there. And yet again, as you saw yesterday, it fell apart for Rora Rimbo. You have graphical glitches all the time. It runs weird sometimes, but it looks really good in its own way, like stylistically speaking. So yeah, this is a trend. I was thinking about this about a month ago. I was having this monologue in my head about development studios. Yeah, you can, if you're talking about the actual... Oh, a game, okay. Is it by Cryo again? I mean, I don't think Cryo exists anymore. Yeah, Shadowrun never did pose much of a challenge. I mean, I did play it on normal, but as it relied on random generation for hits and damage numbers, Clay, that doesn't really ring a bell for me. Just final extreme highlights here and there for some extra pop. Anyway, in what context are you bringing it up? Just give me a second before I forget what the hell it was that I'm doing, and I'll take a look at it. Oh, that sounds good. And I am always up for turn-based. Oh, it looks fine, yeah. Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I've been watching trailers of it. It's more of a stealth game, so it's like a turn-based Commandos, if I recall correctly. So you need to consider vision cones, avoid detection, and so on. For instance, let me bring up the screenshot. For instance, the red ones here would be areas where the hostiles have vision cones, and the green zones would be where you can actually go. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. It's a pretty recent... it's somewhat recent title, if I'm not mistaken, like a couple of years maybe. Right, so it's not an avatar, but it's an AI. Still, that's cool. The reason why I didn't go for it when it came out was precisely the stealth sections. I wasn't in the mood to play a stealth turn-based game. Exactly, yeah, you need to actually be very tactical, choose your targets in order to make it from point A to point B rather than just eliminate everything on the map. Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, definitely this will... Thanks, that's a good idea for a game. Again, the only thing that keeps me back from it is that whole avoid detection kind of thing. But that was then. Maybe now I will be more lenient. Oh, that's nice. Did not know that. Yeah, I will look into it. Invisible ink, as in incorporated, and not ink as in something to write with or draw with. That is what got me confused initially. Do I want to go even lighter on the shoulder here? I don't think so. Yeah, I know what you mean. This one I do know. Let's put a highlight on the top of the ears. Just a little bit on the bottom. And then a little bit on the nose. A little bit here on the upper part. tiny bit. A bit here. And on the top of the forehead. Yeah, okay. Again, it does look a bit kabuki-ish because of the high contrast. Oh, I might need to go in with a wash to blend it down a bit. Okay, see you later, and bon appetit. Yeah, but not for a face that should be with natural colors. Anyway, I'll fix it. In the meantime, enjoy your Territor. Alright, so one last break from me. And we move on to the shading. Which will help us separate highlighted from unhighlighted. I kinda like how this turned out. It might actually be better than usual. Maybe. Just maybe. So there are two things to take out from this. One, a smaller brush does give you a little bit more control. And B, I am not good enough to graduate to a larger brush yet. Which is sad. There was a moment at which I did honestly think that I can move on to larger brushes. But apparently, looking at the results now and comparing them by memory from the previous models and the amount of effort that I put, the results here are noticeably better for a distinctly less time put in. And maybe if I stop dropping the model, maybe get some paint not chipping off. Fine. But I put just a couple of patches on the arm that's reaching out, maybe. Just a couple of dots here and there to emphasize verticality. I should really invest more time in painting faces. Although I am happy with how the eyes came out this time around, the highlights are a bit too harsh. It makes it look like it has a mask on. Okay, let's try and estimate how many more streams it would take to finish this guy if I'm going with the same tempo. So one stream for the blue, one stream for the gray and the brown, and one for the metallics, and one for basing. Yikes. Gonna be slow. Yeah, so I will be looking for a free weekend where I'll probably make a longer stream, and I'll try to make up for lost time. Because after him I have 3 more dudes and time is running out. We're already reaching. Before you know it, we will be in the half of August. And I need to get some more games in for practice. I would like to get the team ready for at least one tabletop practice game. So I should really pick up the pace on this. But for now, keep it simple, keep it in the now, and now means pin shading. For anyone that is not familiar with the term, it means that I will put a wash-like substance, in this case a GW Reichland Flesh Shade in specific places instead of covering the entire surface. And I will be thinning it down significantly so I can have some control. And it seems like I will need to switch my palette paper for the next stream. This one appears to be all but filled up. And I don't really like switching out palette paper mid-project. What are you gonna do? It's time, it's time. Right, so let's start here between the feet, fingers, the toes, the fingers, and I will be going opposite from the highlighting, meaning the strokes will go away from the vertical, away from the top, so towards the bottom. Makes sense. I promise. Keeping a little bit of the mid-tone visible in cases such as this. And put some of it a bit heavier anywhere where there is a crevice, in order to help separate the details. So in this case, darker shade would be here, because the bone would be throwing more shade downward. And right here. And of course here in the bottom. Again, leaving just a little bit of the mid-tone, so we don't make the change too drastic. Filling in the gap. Thinning a little bit more. I'm getting a bit of a too heavy. Darkening. And whenever it gets too dark, I like to catch a little bit of the color and draw it down. And a very thin shade right here, since the knee would be throwing the shade around, and to break up the monotony of the initial highlight layer, which went on a little bit thicker than I wanted. This will give it some gradient, like this. And we can move on to the other leg. And just a straight line in between the toes. Thin it out. And apply to the top. So not the tip, but the top. If that makes any sense. Because at this point I'm just throwing words around. I just want to get through this part at this point. Here again, trying to catch a little bit of the mid-tone. The mid-tone being the base color. So we can get another gradation of color tone. So on the inside, and up towards the fur, so we can have a good separation between the flesh and the fur. And as this has dried off, I can apply a second layer, emphasize it further. Here I can go a bit heavier because it is a darker area. Again, trying to hit the edges of the next detail, so we enforce segmentation between the details. Not that anyone's gonna be looking at the model from this angle, but still. For my own comfort. Putting in a bit more shade. I like these shade tones. They are a very flexible tool to have. They have much more, quite a bit more applications than just to bring the entirety of a surface down tonally. Here I will need a bit more wash. And here in the abdominal area, I can go a bit heavier because it is obscured. And I will be catching a bit of the first highlight to bring the entirety down, simulating a progressive shadow as opposed to a three-step separation. In a way, I am just trying to emulate having put more work than I actually have, as this will give us additional dimensions of shadow. And again, we always hit the edge so we can get a nice pooling and a distinct separation. I'll probably repeat this word about 1 billion times before the stream is over, but bear with me here. As this is a process that has resulted in a significant breakthrough in my own painting level, I am very proud to have adopted it. And so I am a bit more vocal about its use than I am for other techniques. But it was truly a very, very significant jump in quality. Especially compared to the time invested. And if this sound is anything to go on, one of my wishlisted games in Steam is now on sale. Probably not gonna get it no matter what it is, but I'll check it out. Yeah. Definitely. I did touch upon this when I was painting the metallics. You asked me that question. Yes. I will be using a much brighter gold to highlight the yellow metallics.
Yeah, you and me, we're gonna light up the sky. Light up the sky. Read
specifically on the buckles here, the little buckles. During the painting process, they will become more visible, but after I varnish the model, separation might dissipate a little bit because the shine of the metallic will be lost, as I'll be using a matte varnish. But I will try to bring them up as much as possible. Now, you could make the argument that I could varnish the metallics in a glossy varnish, but that will require... I don't think that the time to invest in using different finish varnishes actually accounts for the result that will be achieved.
And I was like, damn, son. Sublime with Rome is not the same thing as sublime. Sublime with Rome was depressing and did not feel right. It's not the same, it's not the same. The width of part was printed dismal.
So let's just say I will go matte. Well, actually, whenever I am varnishing my models, I am going... Yeah, definitely, it goes around. It goes completely insane from rocky to rappy to... There were some sort of industrial tracks earlier on. Yeah, what I was trying to say is that I go through a two-step process for the varnish. Initially, I spray over a satin finish varnish to give it protection. So better protect. The glossier the finish, the better protected the model is, because gloss varnishes give a thicker, more resilient coat than matte varnishes. So initially I put a satin finish varnish on the model, and then I brush on matte varnish for the aesthetic effect. The first step being for functionality and protection, and the second one for aesthetic reasons. It doesn't bring down the satin completely, so it does have a little bit of a sheen left. But it is still better than to just leave it. Now that I have gotten the enamel matte wash from Tester's dull coat, on other projects I might try to go just one coat of the enamel matte, since enamel varnishes are stronger than acrylic ones. But we'll see if I trust it enough. Just put a little bit here. And let's try and get rid of the harsh separations here. It'll either help or it'll make things worse. Let's see which one we'll get. I think we will get the latter, unfortunately. Yeah. Oh well. Sort of. Kinda. Just make this highlight a bit more symmetrical. Just a tiny bit more on the hands, because I forgot them. And I can go heavier here because it should be more shadowy. And try and blend it with the highlight. And for the inside of the palm, I'll just wash all over it, since the initial gradation will remain, but it will just be brought down as a whole, leaving just this little smidgen right here. And then we have this hand. Here I will not go through all of it. I did not go for final highlights here. And it is higher, so it does receive more light. So I will be a bit more careful. Does anything stick out a little bit? I'll bring this down a little bit more. So it doesn't make sense to be this bright. Yeah, I think that's it. Far from perfect, but should work. Yep. Oh, and after the wash dried, yeah, looks fine. Let's try to bring the contrast down a bit, so you can see what it is that happened. So you can see the dark. So there is no natural shade being thrown from the light right now, since it is straight below. And you can take a look and see the shadow progression and the color progression, because that's right below the source light. Yep. And then behind. If I could keep exposure like this, it'd be great. Unfortunately, I can't. Yeah. I am, while not happy, I am satisfied with this. How it turned out. another interesting way to check out if your shadows have been placed correctly is to flip the model around. So if you look at it from below and you see a darker overall tone than you would see if you look at it from the top, then you made the most important part right. Yes, Dunzeys. Good. And that is, I'm gonna call the flesh officially done. After the stream, I will get the other one and make a quick comparison. See if I have strayed too far away from the results. Although he is twice varnished, so the comparison wouldn't be accurate until I actually varnish this one as well, so... Nah. I think it should be enough. I mean the other Ulf Werner, not the other model that was... this one hasn't been touched, so... Oh, no worries, no worries. I'm talking about the other Ulf Werner. Otherwise, this guy has not been touched in a couple of weeks. So I was thinking about making a comparison just for the skin. But then I realized that the varnishes do make a slight change in tonality. So it wouldn't be accurate anyway, the comparison. But yeah, I am calling the flesh done. Shadows are distinct, highlights are distinct. Yeah, the key points that I'm looking at is whether or not there are too unnaturally looking highlights rather than the actual tones of the skin. Yeah, sure. Just to compare, because I'm using different brushes, and I wanted to see from a technical standpoint whether or not I matched them by eye. Probably not, but as you said. Originally, I even wanted to make them different colored furs. So one would be black-gray fur like on the box art, and the other one would have brown fur. But then I realized that the other dudes, such as this guy, his cloth is fur, and the theme is to be gray. Meaning that if I make gray fur on the Ulf Werner... Yeah, but again, it would have turned out as if they have actually skinned other Ulf Werners in order to cover their asses. And I don't want to leave that impression. It would just thematically clash. Yeah. Don't mess with me, right? Either way, it's already done. I'll need to deal with what I made. I wear your ass on my ass. Yeah, there is. Room for thought. So next time, which will probably be tomorrow, I'll be hitting the blue and the gray, and then we get to the metallics. And I would need to think about weekends to put on longer streams, just to make up for time, get some actual progress done. But I give this guy maybe two streams before basing. He's nearly done. I should be able to get through 2 colors in one sitting. Especially those colors. They're not too hard to deal with. Right, well, that'll be it from me for tonight. Thank you very much, Big in Space, for keeping me company for this time. I think we had a rather nice chat, and we spent some good time together, and in the meanwhile, I actually made some progress on the miniature as well. So I would mark this as a good stream. Thank you, and I wish you a very pleasant rest of the evening, of the night, or whatever time it is, whenever it is that you're watching. Keep doing what you love, and loving what you do. I've been Bachacolio, signing out. Bye bye.